Welcome to Uncover the Human, where every conversation revolves around enhancing all the connections in our lives.
Whether that's with our families, co-workers, or even ourselves.
When we can be our authentic selves, magic happens.
This is Cristina Amigoni.
And this is Alex Cullimore.
Let's dive in.
Welcome back to another special episode of Uncover the Human. We're joined again by Aaron as we are continuing our book series to help promote our book, The Authenticity Upgrade, Rebooting Leadership for Real Humans. So we've talked a little bit about authenticity, the importance of authenticity, some of the self-reflection and values that go into that. And now we're moving on to some of the other portions of the book, which are about relationships, as well as we will talk later about groups and AI.
Yeah. Good. Well, in the book, you talk about deep listening, listening beyond words. Why is that so hard for us at work?
We're starting right in the deep end.
Right. At the top.
Let's hurt ourselves stepping into this one.
Maybe I should have read the questions before we got.
Yeah.
All right.
Just for the note, Cristina did write these questions.
I did write them. Yes.
And I'm reading them.
But that was yesterday, which right now
whole
feels
different
like
brain.
a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So listening. I would say listening is hard all the time, not just at work. At work specifically, it's hard because it's seen as a waste of time. It's somehow people are walk into the door, into their workplace or into their work office, and there's supposed to be some sort of telepathic knowledge that everybody has, and way of communicating, but there isn't really. Most of the times there isn't really the space or the understanding that listening is something that needs to be worked on and done. It's not just something that automatically happens, or if you skip it, it's okay.
Yeah. And we often talk about when we bring up things like deep listening in workshops that we spend a lot of time. There's plenty of classes that people can go to, and they're very worthwhile to do things like public speaking. There's a lot of how to be more eloquent, how to make sure that you can deliver a speech, but there's less a focus on listening, and it ends up being as important, if not way more important, to actually engage in deep listening. And one of the activities we get them to practice deep listening. Often people will say, well, that actually took way more effort than I was anticipating. And you start to realize to actually actively deeply listen just takes a good amount of exertion until you're more used to it. Then it'll take a little bit less over time, but it does just take practice and awareness and continually reinforcing I've got to be back and got to be present, got to really be with this person in what they're saying and what they are not saying that is still being communicated. And that ends up being a huge difference maker in making teams that work, making people more cohesive, allowing for some more psychological safety. But it's something that we don't do in the workplace because it does take more effort. We're not generally in the practice. When we get promoted to leadership roles, we tend to just be good at the job we did before we were leaders and not realize that now we are in charge of helping people do the job, not do the job ourselves. And that listening becomes so much more important. But we aren't usually told this. We aren't usually reminded of this. It's just we find this slowly but surely through time, unless we were already kind of ready to listen to people. And it does take that practice. And in the modern workforce, of course, there's also just the endless pinging distractions. There's a bunch of things going on while you're talking. There's a bunch of things that you're trying to focus on and trying to get done and trying to accomplish in a meeting. And deep listening sometimes feels like it takes more effort and time than people feel like they have. And the trick is that you end up paying for that later if you don't make that time earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, let's dig into that deep listening a little bit more in terms of the LAVA framework, where LAVA meaning listen, acknowledge, validate, and ask. That LAVA framework comes up a lot in this chapter. How did you land on that, and what makes it so powerful?
Well, Alex gets all the credit for the acronym.
And originally, when I
lava.
pitched it, it was not as well received.
True.
Especially when it was pitched in front of, I don't know, 300 people at a public speaking event. And it was like, I guess we're going with it now.
Oh,
I forgot that's how we introduced this.
Yes, yes.
That's cool. I like that.
But it does come from our coach background. It comes from understanding that, like if you are in conversation with somebody and you actually want to connect and you want to have understanding and be able to move forward together in whatever you're trying to do, it starts with listening. Like, it doesn't start with speaking. There's all sorts of quotes and memes and things like that. There's a reason why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. It's because we're supposed to be listening more than speaking. That's just one of the many ways of saying this, but it starts with listening. And when we think about looking at the human side of pretty much everything, because until AI really takes over, there's going to be some human interaction somewhere, every minute, every day, even with ourselves. The listening first allows for that curiosity, starting with curiosity rather than judgment. And it also opens up the space to then 2 people or more people to be in that space doing something, as opposed to just one person dictating and then turning around and, oh, well, nobody's following or they're doing their own thing. So that it's the listening, definitely, it's the first step to create that empathy and to create that connection. And until we become great white sharks that roam the ocean on our own, we may want to create connections with other humans around us.
Was that an option? Do we get to become that? Is that the trajectory we're on?
Anything is possible.
No, I think that's a great way of putting it, because listening does come up first. If you listen deeply, you're listening both for what people are saying and what they're not saying. And so understanding their tone, understanding their energy, seeing what they're really reacting to. And that if you're looking for that, you're not just thinking about what you need to say next. And so you put yourself into better curious mindset, like you were saying, Cristina. It's more empathetic, it's more curious, and you give them a lot more space to engage with what they want to say. And so that allows people to have the space to explain themselves. I actually just read something recently that was it was some quote around if people wants to understand you, they will. If they don't want to understand you, they won't. And if you put that intent out there that you will work to understand somebody, you'll find a way to do it. And deep listening is a great way to start that and to actually find that understanding, because then you are giving them the space to explain themselves. And then that's when we get into the other parts of the Lava framework, like acknowledging and validating, where you're making sure that really is that it's okay what they're saying, and that you understand what they're saying, and that that it is acknowledged and understood, so that communication is fully taking place. It's not just somebody is saying something, but somebody's also understanding that something. And so we ended up we knew that through coaching, listening, acknowledging, validating, and asking open-ended questions was an important way to frame things. And we've started to say that Lava is really kind of that molten core of relationships, because it lets people get deeper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even it's still the most popular piece in all our workshops and trainings, to the point that it's something that people have gotten to understand and practice, and immediately want to turn around and experience it and have other people experience it. So as a concept, it definitely went beyond our own. We knew it was important, and when we put it out there, but we didn't realize how much it was going to become part of the fabric of how people start showing up immediately. I mean, how many times do we read something or hear something or go to a training or go to a workshop, and we walk out and very little behavior follows that, in the sense of, there's not much that that's applicable, or that you want to apply, that you truly desire the wanting to apply right away. And Lava has been that. I mean, we've had people that go home that evening and start applying it with their families, and then we'll come back to training the next day and say like, oh my God, this conversation that I've had with my wife for 3 months and never got anywhere, we finally concluded it. And we got great steps, but it's that desire to want to like walk out and be like, I want to try this. So something shifts when people are on the receiving end of that and when they're experiencing it and realize like, I now feel seen, I feel heard, and I feel like I've connected more with the other people around me. And I want to see if I can create that same experience for others.
Yeah, it's one of those weird moments where you feel like you've been having conversations your whole life. You've been having dialogue, certainly with people often, and then you suddenly have a different way of doing it. And suddenly there's a different layer to it. And suddenly it feels like there's something else that you can try in conversations. And it sometimes feels like pulling back a little bit of the layers of, oh, there's a pattern to doing this instead of just whatever we've learned to do. And some people can end up being very effective communicators, and some people it's just not what we were taught to do or not what we had the opportunity to do or were encouraged to do. And so finding something that gives you a little bit of a foothold helps people just kick off that, oh, I can create space, and this is actually like, this is a more fun and deep conversation, and I enjoy this more than just the perfunctory, hey, how's the weather?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can apply lava to the how's the weather question too. I mean,
But then you get into like, how do you feel about the weather is really where you're how's the weather? And then their response, you're like, it seems like the rain is not your friend.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, speaking of moments in your own careers where listening deeply has changed the outcome, where has listening deeply changed the outcome of a tough conversation?
oof. The outcome of a tough conversation. That's assuming I don't avoid tough conversations. When has listening deeply has changed the outcome of a tough conversation? I would say it helps me to focus on the listening deeply when, even before I approach a tough conversation. So if there's a tough conversation where I know I am nervous or I have a script. So a lot of times we avoid tough conversations, or when we're forced to have them, or we get to the point where there's so much avoidance and then you just gotta have them. You dread them. We dread tough conversations because there's vulnerability, there's the potential for getting hurt, there's the potential for getting shamed, guilt, all of it. If we go back to something we talked about in, I think, one of the first episodes of this part series podcast is, having a tough conversation. If it doesn't go well, you can get excluded by the tribe, which means the saber-toothed tigers are going to kill you. So you kind of go down that spiral, which is why it feels easier to avoid them. But the listening piece and really focusing on that helps me take a step back and realize I can come up with a script all I want, but I actually don't know how the conversation is going to go because I don't know what's in the other person's head. So if I can focus on something I can control as opposed to all those things in that script that I cannot control, is listening. That is the one piece I can control. And if I deeply listen, then I can just go where the conversation goes and really show up with curiosity, as opposed to, this is the script, this is how it's going to go, this is how I'm going to reply, this is when I'm going to turn around and smack somebody in the face, and then we're going to walk off and it's all going to be resolved. And so it's stepping back and realize, like, I have no idea how this is going to go. Yeah. And I can't control that. But I can control how I show up in the listening and in the deep listening, and being there and being curious, in removing distractions, and in being open to the vague possibility that I may not actually have all the answers in my head.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it. I think it's that it almost puts you in a better frame of mind going into that conversation. Because if you're trying to practice deep listening, then you have to genuinely listen to what the person is giving to you, not judging it, but listening to it so you can best understand like what they happen to be putting out. And it could feel frustrating. You can maybe you've walked into the conversation feeling like there's going to be conflict, or you have all these things you want to say. But if you step into that deep listening space, then it's more about, okay, I'm going to try and figure out what they are working to communicate to me. And then that, if you can allow yourself that space, helps give them the space, helps you stay in a curious mindset. And then you have a different, you can maybe see either where they're coming from or have some empathy for, okay, they maybe they just are reacting more strongly than I thought. And to your point, Cristina, there's just a way to deflate the script that you had in your head of how this was going to go.
It allows for true empathy. Like it truly allows for understanding, for remembering that this is another human being. And for the most part, except for, I'm sure there's some out there, but for the most part, more humans don't wake up in the morning and think, I'm going to make somebody's life really miserable today. And so applying lava and like starting with the listening, having that control really gives that the possibility of what could be. As opposed to this is how it's going to go, and here's all my rebuttals, and I'm going to win this. There's no longer winning. The winning becomes the connection, not I have to win for my own survival piece.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where that acknowledging and validating comes in, particularly important, and remembering that it's okay to validate how somebody's feeling, to acknowledge what they have said without endorsing it. You don't have to agree with what they're saying. You just have to acknowledge it so that they feel like they are heard. And that can tremendously reduce the number of circles you run in a conversation or in an argument, because then they're not just trying to be understood. And I like that redefinition of winning, Cristina, because it feels like the victory becomes, are we understood? Do we at least understand each other? It doesn't mean we agree. It doesn't mean we're going to walk away and we're all on the same page, or we're newly best friends or whatever. It's just, do we understand each other? And can we acknowledge that to each other? Because it's a lot harder to continue to force a conversation or have a bad conversation or have a negative outcome when you've entered into that empathetic space and you're willing to hear somebody, again, whether you agree with them, whether you're going to endorse what they're saying, it's just understanding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How can leaders use lava, listen, acknowledge, validate, and ask in everyday check-ins or interactions with their employees without it feeling forced?
Well, it's interesting because one of the things that we hear a lot that leaders want is they want for their people to feel empowered. Yeah. And so, that's a big thing. It's like, like, what do you want, for your teams? I want them to feel empowered. I want them to not come to me for every single answers. I want them to not come to me for permission to do things. I want innovation. I want them working together without being told, all of these things. And yet none of them can actually happen unless, as a leader, you listen first. If you're the ones that is speaking all the time, and you're the one that is always providing the answer, and you're the one that's always telling people what to do, guess what's not going to happen? People are not going to feel empowered. Yeah. People feel empowered when they feel seen. And if you listen and you start understanding the uniqueness and what they can bring to the table, that is going to be different from what you bring to the table. And even if it's the same, it's going to be done differently. That's when people will actually try things on their own. And so, from a leadership perspective, the question really is, do you want people to feel empowered or not? And if you don't, great. Admit that that's the kind of leadership you have. You're my kind of leadership, not my kind of leadership, but be authentic to your own self. Mm-hmm. If you're a leadership that wants to dictate because that's where you find your own worth, then declare that and say, this is who I am. This is how I'm going to lead. If you don't like it, find somewhere else to go. Mm-hmm. But have the authenticity and the courage to stand in that, as opposed to what so often happens, which is people are important and I want them to feel empowered and all of this, but then there's zero listening. Then you walk into a meeting room and there's only one person talking all the time, and it's the leader. Until they ask questions like, questions, no questions? Okay, I assume everybody understood what they're doing. That's not empowering. But if that's what you want, that's what you get.
Yeah. If If you want to be the bottleneck and the linchpin and the person who has to make every single decision, then that's fine. Lava can be a way to release yourself of that and get the answers from the team that is closer to what needs to be answered. If you're looking for how work needs to be done, this is one of the ways to help. They talk about like pushing decisions to the lowest point of expertise. Like whoever's closest to the problem should be able to should have the decision making power over that decision. This is the way to help get into that and help understand what those things are. And to your question, Aaron, of like how do you step into it without it feeling forced? We've had this question a couple of times because there's definitely like Christina's example. There's the people who aren't going to try and lead this way, and that's fine. There's the people who do want to lead this way, and there's a lot of people in the middle who are like, oh, this seems like a good idea, but it's going to be different than my style that I've done up to this point, or my team's going to find this weird when I'm suddenly stepping in and asking questions instead of telling them like here's a status update. So one-on-ones are a great place to practice this, and one thing that we have helps people with is have them understand that you can just tell your team you're trying something new. You can be very explicit about like, hey, learned about this thing. I just want to try out. Like, I'm going to ask more questions. This might feel, different than how we've done it, but here's what we're going to explicitly step into and just give a whirl just to see what it feels like. And it then not only gives you a little piece of credibility of, hey, I'm trying something, just so that people already know, hey, they're trying something new, and this is what we're going to. It puts everybody into more of an experimental headspace. It also tells them, hey, I'm working on things. I'm trying to improve. Here's an option, and then we're going to see how this feels. And it gives them a little stake in it. It gives them the ability to know that you want to change and you want to do something differently, and gives you a foothold into, okay, this might be a different behavior than what I've done before, but I have a chance to step into it and see how it works for my team.
And that was a perfect demonstration of me not listening to the question and then going off with my own script. And then Alex answering the question because he actually heard it.
Well, this is true. And however, I would give you kudos, Alex, for segueing us into, the value of relationships, but sometimes that relationships don't really thaw when in the context of engaging with your teams, even with curiosity and patience. So how do you know when to keep trying versus when to walk away?
I think that's a good question. I like I don't know that I have an easy definitive answer. If you think about your own experience in going through the workplace, there's probably places where you felt like you had a little bit more trust, or you had a team you enjoyed working with, and places where you felt a little less of that. You felt like maybe there was, or I'm sure almost everybody has an example in their head right away of a boss where they're like, "Ooh, didn't like that person, didn't like working for them." Like that was hard. These are experiences we carry forward. So even if we are in a new space, even if our boss wants to go try lava with us and we have a more trusting relationship, we can still feel the weight of the previous relationships. And so when you are a leader and you want to try these things, you want to try thawing out relationships, which I think is a great term for it. It's not going to happen overnight. Trust is built in the little pieces and the consistency. And people will generally move towards it as long as there's a continued enough space. And nobody's going to move at the same pace. Some people will be able to step into that and they're just waiting for that permission. Some people will have already been doing it, whether they had the permission or not. And some people will take a little longer to feel like, oh no, this is safe. I think they actually mean it. I can lower my defenses a little bit. Sure. And so I think it's a bit of a gut check of where do you think the intention of the person is. And this is another great example of like deep listening. Are they trying to? Are they resistant? Like they have some ideas and you'll see them like put their toes out a little bit here and there and try something. And that really gets back. You have to get back into that curious space of like, do I see what I think is them reaching out? Can I be more explicit about like, hey, I'm hoping to get more information from you. I feel like you haven't spoken up much, or like I'd like to know what's going on. Can you get curious? If there's a continual resistance, if there's no sign of improvement, then it becomes, well, maybe this person doesn't want to, or maybe this, and then it's a question of how is this affecting the team? How is this affecting our performance? And is this something that we can keep having as a team? Are they helping the team? Are they hurting the team? Are they helping themselves? And that I think those become the questions you have to evaluate when you don't feel like you're making any progress, you don't feel like there's a way forward.
And I think it's also as part of the deep listening, when we talk about that, we talk about how it's not just the words. So it's not volume. You're not counting how many words somebody says. You're not counting, how much empty space is left or not left when somebody speaks. Deep listening really takes also listening to the non-verbal pieces of a communication, which 90% is not verbal. So looking at it, facial expressions, understanding body language, understanding, even the tone of the words used, the pauses between they're used. And so when we are in that deep listening mode, we can start picking up things that maybe tell us, hey, this person the thawing is not happening in a group setting. Maybe let's try one-on-one and let's see if that changes. Or maybe let's try a smaller group. Or maybe let's go for lunch and change the settings. So what are other ways that you can create a relationship with this person that is different from the standard? It's like it's our staff meeting and it's weekly and they don't speak up, so it's all their fault and there's nothing I can do about it. I'm like, well, there's actually a lot you can do about that. And it's really to start observing some of the behaviors. If you notice that they are in a, if you're in the office and you notice that they are actually having a conversation, a passionate conversation with somebody else one-on-one, but then in group meetings, they don't speak, investigate. Is it the group meeting? Is it the people in the meeting? What is it? How can you change the settings, the environment to see what else could be happening? And it also takes time. It goes back to listening in the workplace. It's so bad because it takes time and people don't take the time, but it takes time. I mean, we've been in situations where especially longer engagements, when we know we have weekly meetings with groups of people that have to start creating relationships and trust with each other and with us, like it takes weeks and months of silences and waiting and more silences and more waiting. And then at some point, things start turning around. But sometimes it took 2-3 months of weekly meetings before some individuals or even most of the individuals would actually speak up.
And when you're in a team situation like that, it's nice to have some people that will carry it while you're experimenting with those, because then you know that you can. And also, as you get more comfortable with it, you get better at more subconsciously tracking, like, okay, so this person's still not coming out. You can keep making invites, hey, haven't heard from you, hey, let's hear from X so-and-so, whatever it is. Those things can help, and just continue to reiterate that you are seeking that, you are reaching out from your side of the bridge, and hopefully the rest of the team helps carry the meeting so that you have just, okay, we'll get there. Or if after a while, then maybe it's a more direct conversation of like, look, I feel like I'm not getting any participation here. Maybe it becomes that, but I like that idea of experimenting with different situations and scenarios to help people kind of unlock and see what the different blocks may be, and help them decide whether this is something they want to step into.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I mean, in really kind of getting that to metastasize and something that they want to step into, what are some of the ripple effects that you've seen in organizations when people start adopting these practices?
Lots more trust and collaboration. So it's amazing how, especially when we are around organizations long enough to see the progress, it's amazing how you can have two people or certain groups that do not talk to each other unless there's a formal meeting or there's a formal way that somebody else organized for that conversation and collaboration to happen. And then once they start practicing some of the tools, and once they start again like thawing through different settings, that those walls, they get into this new mode of like, oh, I just pick up the phone and call them and resolve it, as opposed to wait for the meeting, the staff meeting in a month with 20 of us in it. And so a lot of those things we've seen then carry forward, like years carry forward. Having this type of experience in one setting, and then carrying forward those relationships and that trust and the de-siloing that happens between departments and teams 3-4 years later, it's still happening. there's still that trust built because the relationship and the connection were prioritized at the same, in the same way and with the tools.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge one. That's the one you see on the outside the most. One other interesting corollary that sometimes comes up is that there's actually a really heavy tie over between our relationship with ourselves and our relationship with other people. We have voices in our head that we talk to, essentially, whether we feel like it or not, whether we feel like we're engaging in some kind of dialogue or not. There's things that we're engaging with, and when we do things like practice lava and get into deep listening, we get a little better at putting ourselves in that empathetic and curious space. And that can help us with our own relationship to ourselves. That puts us into a better spot of not judging what's coming up for ourselves. If we can start to practice that acknowledging and validating of how I see this is what's coming up, and I think I understand why I might be upset by this, that helps us not move our own shame spirals and meta feelings. And as you do that, people all take the temperature down. So you're giving other people space. They tend to then give other people space. As you practice these tools, you're giving yourself space. There's more room for people to feel like there's breathing room. And that's a lot easier to develop trust when people are not feeling under the gun and not feeling like there's something that is pressuring them inside or out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So more trust, more collaboration, more empathy.
Yeah, definitely. And that covers us for all the questions related to this theme of one-on-one relationships, listening, and building trust.
Yeah. So join us next time where we find out what other hard questions Cristina has written down for us.
That I'm not going to read. So it's going to be a whole surprise for me.
Jumping in, zero prep.
Yes.
Let's do this.
Yes. Well, thanks for listening.
Yes,
deeply.
thank you very much.